Hey, my Diablo Druid fans, we got the patch notes for Diablo 4 Season 7, which is going to be starting on Tuesday. So I kind of wanted to do a quick rundown on the seasonal event, some of the changes, and some of the Druid changes we're quite excited about. So let's check this out together. First, we'll start off with covering the seasonal event. It's the season of the Witchcraft. We're going to get the Witchcraft powers. So we got the Eldritch, Psyche, and Growth and Decay. Eldritch is more of your destructive energy. Psyche is your defensive powers, and Growth and Decay is health and harm. So those are your three different kind of power groups that you're going to be able to look through. We're going to be getting the headhunt zones, which are basically hell times with the events happening in it for the season. You're going to gather the materials for upgrading your witch powers. Headhunt bosses will also spawn in these areas with the potential to have a head to collect, and when defeated, if you will get that head and you'll trade it in for the seasonal occult gems to boost your witch powers and your general power overall. During the seasonal quest line, you'll progress through the quest line, with the last quest being a more challenging and aspirational achievement, which will reward us with a crow pet at the end. So we'll see how actually is aspirational this actually is for the final quest. But that pretty much covers the actual season of the Witchcraft. All right, we're going to just cover the Vessel of Hatred changes coming very briefly. There's going to be a new Spiritborn aspect and unique here. We're getting a couple new runes. The Spiritborn is getting some balancing, but the Spiritborn is still supposed to be one of the stronger classes according to Blizzard in the campfire chat, but hopefully it's a little more in line with all the other classes. We also will be getting some changes to the bartering caches for the mercenaries just to get a bit more materials and resources based on torment tiers. Report track caches also will be giving you a little bit more as well. We're getting some rune balancing, so hopefully they feel a little more impactful and feel better, and we aren't just kind of stuck using the default few that felt really good last season. In the base game, we're getting some new things for Barbarian in the form of aspects and a unique. Druids, we're getting a new unique for an amulet, which is going to make our Lupine Ferocity critical strike damage increased to 150 to 200% when consecutively critical striking. I think this is going to be great. They're getting a aspect that also, whenever you shift into a new animal form, it'll deal a lightning bolt damage to a nearby enemy, and your lightning bolts will also deal 20 to 40% increased damage and stun for 2 seconds. So that's pretty neat. And then we're also getting that new aspect that will make Hurricane also affect your wolves. And then we're getting a new tempering recipe for Werewolf Finesse. So we're moving out the shape shifting. So we have poison damage, werewolf attack speed, and crit chance in this new tempering recipe. Necromancers are getting some new uniques and a aspect. Rogues, they are also getting a new unique as well as some aspects here and a new tempering recipe. So generally we're getting some just general little updates, whether it's uniques or aspects for each of the classes. Barbarians getting some decent balancing just to make them a little more stronger, it would seem. And they're balancing out some of the aspects as well and uniques related to this, as well as their Paragon board. Now, Druids, this is where we're going to dive in a little bit further, just because I know this is what we're going to be playing when Season 7 launches. We are going to be able to cast Hurricane while you're moving, so this is going to be fun for anyone who's playing a Hurricane Druid. Raging Shred is getting a massive buff. So Raging Shred's third combo attack is larger, applies an additional 143 poison damage over 5 seconds, and causes enemies to take 150% multiplicative increased poisoning damage for 5 seconds. This seems massive. That was 30% before, and now it's 150. Poison Werewolf might actually be quite effective this season. Innate Blood Howl. So So it used to only generate 20 spirit. Now it generates 20 spirit and increases your damage by 25% until you shapeshift out of werewolf. That's massive. That's a massive amount of power, and you're not losing it as long as you're staying in werewolf form. I think this is going to be a very powerful tool in the werewolf toolkit. Grizzly Rage, the damage bonus at the start has been increased to 60%, so that's solid. And then at rank 5, it knocks down surrounding enemies for 5 seconds and deals 200% damage to them. If they still have the cooldown at the end of Grizzly Rage, or sorry, they don't have the cooldown until Grizzly Rage ends, I think they need to change that back, because right now, not being able to leave Grizzly Rage is not great. And also, since it's your only form of breaking CC, being able to refresh it using the actual Grizzly Rage so you can break CC if you have to, since it only gives it to you for a few seconds now, I think they need to change that. So Lacerate is going to have a higher base damage now of 600%, and at rank 5, they decrease the bonus damage you get from critical strike damage. So basically, before you were getting 40% of your critical strike damage as bonus multiplicative damage, dropped it down to 30. I think that's fine. Cataclysm, it now rank 5 slows surrounding enemies 70%. So again, if you're playing a Cataclysm build, that's going to be awesome to kind of keep the enemies at bay. Rank 5, casting Petrify resets all your non-ultimate skill cooldowns. I think that's going to be very interesting, and I wonder if it's going to have any kind of effect while you're using the actual rune word that gives you the free cast of Petrify if it's at rank 5. I'm looking forward to see how that works out. Lupine Ferocity, they did a huge buff here. So Werewolf critical strikes deal 75% damage multiplicative flat all the time. And then every third Werewolf strike is going to be a critical hit. So I think that is amazing. Toxic Claw. So before they had it, so critical strikes from Werewolf skills deal 12% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 4 seconds. And now they say critical strikes with Shred and Lacerate deal an additional 24% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 4 seconds. But they actually changed this up in the top from the PTR changes. So I don't know why they didn't update this here. But Toxic Claw no longer requires critical strikes, and it just triggers off of any damage from Lacerate or Shred. So this could actually be quite a massive change to Toxic Claw. I'm really curious how it's actually going to perform in the long run. I think it sounds good on paper. So I'm going to have to test it out. Heightened Sense got a massive nerf. So when you shapeshift, Werebear grants 3% damage reduction. Werewolf grants 3% movement speed. They both persist while you're in either animal form, but they don't double each other anymore. Then Charged Atmosphere, every 14 seconds, a lightning bolt hits a nearby enemy for 45% damage, and lightning bolts deal a 10% increased damage, which is fine. Boons got buffed a little bit here. You only need 60 per animal, which is nice. They changed some of them. So before, Prickle Skin from the deer used to give you 480 thorn damage. Now you deal 5% multiplicative damage to enemies for 5 seconds after they attack you. Gift of the Stag, now also on top of giving you spirit, gives you 5 spirit every second. Eagle Scythe Talent now gives crit strike chance and lucky hit chance. The Wolf Energize now is a lucky hit chance to fully restore spirit instead of just 30. The Obsidian Snake Slam is every 6 casts causes your next Earth skill to overpower instead of 10 kills. So this is a big buff for the Obsidian Slam. And then Snake Overload now deals 20% poisoning damage over 5 seconds. And Lucky Hit, dealing poison damage, has a 1% chance to summon a lightning bolt on the target, dealing 120% damage. For the aspects, we're getting a massive change to the Blizzard Beast aspect. You're getting a flat damage multiplier to Shred, and Shred has a 33% chance to land an additional strike, and this can trigger up to 4 times. So any hit of Shred has a chance to trigger this. This is a fantastic change. This is potentially game breaking, I think, because getting a 4 times damage multiplier on this is going to be just wild. I'm really excited to try this out on my builds. They changed Unsatiated, so after critical striking an enemy with Shred, now you gain 15 spirit, so no longer have to kill. Then while you're at 100 spirit, Werewolf skills deal a damage multiplier, increased damage, so 20 to 40, and this will last until you go below 30 spirit. So I think that is wild, especially when you're critting and going to be gaining all that spirit. They updated Virulent. Virulent is now a lot more powerful. So instead of just giving you the cooldown reduction on rabies, enemies affected by your rabies will deal 25% to 50% increased damage to those enemies affected by your rabies. So I feel like this is going to be a massive, massive buff to the Virulent aspect. Runeworks Conduit used to be it would charge the air around you, causing lightning bolts to periodically hit enemies in your areas. The bolts of lightning did 20 to 40 increased damage. Now its critical strikes will still cause those lightning bolts to strike close enemies for 3 seconds, and your lightning bolt damage is increased by 15% for every 100 willpower you have, so that might be quite a bit more powerful. Getting some minor unique changes, so we're getting the Tempest Roar is going from flat willpower to % willpower, perfectly fine. And the Molnick Ring, while Cataclysm is active, you're getting that damage bonus still and the unlimited spirit, but now your lightning bolts benefits apply to Cataclysm's lightning bolts. Already discussed the new tempering manual. This is a good change. The Paragon board, they fixed Titan Malice, so now poison enemies just take 35% more damage plus an additional 5 for each additional poison enemy up to 4. So you're still getting a damage multiplier even if you're not surrounded by poison enemies. This is going to be better for bossing. Survival Instinct, we're getting a 30% increased damage while in Werebear form, which goes up to 45% if you're at full life. And you get a overpower damage multiplier up to 25% for every 1% difference in your current life percent and fortified life percent between you and the enemy. Ancestral Guidance, after spending 75 spirit, you deal 40% increased damage for 5 seconds, and now after spending, you still get that spend 75 spirit, get that 40% increased damage, but now your ultimate skill deals 1% increased damage per spirit when cast. So that could be very, very interesting to see how that'll kind of go with the ultimate skills. Some glyph upgrades, which are going to be very basic. We're getting like an extra 5% damage on Keeper Glyph, extra 5% on Territorial, an extra 5% on Undaunted for fortified damage reduction, and then we're getting a additive damage increase on Werewolf damage for the Werewolf Glyph. Getting some solid Necromancer changes. With all the minion changes that are coming in this patch, they're going to be getting a lot of power, so I think their minion builds are going to be good, as well as Blood Wave. We'll see how that plays out. Rogues are getting some general buffs, and their Shadow Clone is being made better, and he actually will copy your skills with all the extra effects you have on it, so that's going to be pretty huge. And Sorcerer, again, getting some changes. Generally pretty positive stuff here as well. And so now Nightmare Dungeons, they're getting some new affixes added to them. Totems can spawn that are going to have negative effects and make the battles a little bit harder. Getting a new rotation of dungeons. And Scents are getting a pretty interesting buff here. So all of them are getting some kind of increase here. So like when you use like your Storm of the Wilds, Desert Escape, any of the specific resistances, Incense, you're getting an additional 2% to the maximum resistance. Song of the Mountain, you're getting an additional 100 armor. Sage Whisper, your core stat is increasing from 25 to 100, so 75 on the core stats for these core stat increases on the Incense. The all stats getting up to 60. So that's pretty huge. Soothing Spice is a maximum resistance on all your resistances, so that's going to be crazy. Thorns is getting an additional 150 damage, and Redamine Buzz is getting an extra 250 life. So we're getting some loot updates. Infernal Compasses will now stack based on their tier, so that's going to be really cool. And then the rest is just general bug fixes. I think overall this is going to be a really fun season, at least to play. But at the end of the day, we'll have to play it and see how it goes. I'm really excited to test out Druids this season. Werewolf Druid is seeming really strong, so I recommend checking out one of our build guides that we've produced for the Werewolf Druid for when you're getting started. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment if you're looking forward to the season of the Witchcraft. And that's it for today. So we'll see you on Tuesday for Season 7 of Diablo 4. Have a good one, everyone.